Today we'll be discussing why Boaz had the merit to be the grandpa of the Mashiach. What did Boaz do that he merited to become the grandfather of the Mashiach? Okay, Boaz and Ruth. Why did they merit to be the grandparents of the Melech HaMashiach? Parshas Bamidbar is the parsha that is always read right before Shavuot. Bamidbar, the parsha is read always before Shavuot. What's the connection between Bamidbar and Matan Torah? Well, the Torah was given in the Midbar, right? The Torah was given in the Midbar. Why is the Torah given in the Midbar? Well, let's take a look. Let's do some text analysis. Bamidbar is always read right before Matan Torah, the parsha. What's the kesher between Bamidbar and the end of Vayikra? We know that one book, the beginning of a new book, has to connect to the end of the old book. So next week we're finishing what? Vayikra. What's the kesher between Bamidbar and the end of Vayikra, which is Bechikotai, right? So let's backtrack. In Parshas Emor, we learn how time is precious. Parshas Emor, we count what? The Sphira. We count every day to make every day count. Svarta Mechem, the word sapir, every day has to be treasured like what? A sapphire. And then, after Parshas Emor, what parsha do we get? Bahar. Bahar, we count Shemitah. Parshas Emor, we count the days. Parshas Bahar, we count Shemitah, we count Yovel. So Parshas Emor, we make the days count. Parshas Bahar, we make the years count. Deals with Shemitah and Yovel. And Achroin Chaviv. What is Parshas Bamidbar about? Counting the Jews. The Am Segula. The message for Bamidbar is for us to stand up and be counted. So first you start off counting the years, then counting the days, and finally in Parshas Bamidbar, Yehuda, what do you count? The people. Stand up and be counted. That's why Parshas Bamidbar is always read, Yehuda, the week before what? Shavuos. That every Jew is precious. Every Jew has to stand up and be counted. All of us have to stand at Har Sinai. Now, Parshas Bamidbar contains no mitzvot. And yet, it's the parsha that is always read, Rabbi Yaakov, before what? Matan Torah. Why before Shavuos? Why a census? Bamidbar is all about a census. Ramban says each and every Jew counts. Each and every Jew is precious and chashuv. To give kavod to every Jew. Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. So in Parshas Bamidbar, you have the word Shemot, Shemot, Shemot written over and over again. B'mispar Shemot, names, names, names. Bamidbar is all about names. Everyone is counted by name, counted by name. And Begillat Ruth, if you look at Begillat Ruth, you have the word shame written over and over again. Vayelech ish beit lechem Yehuda, v'shem o ish Elimelech, v'shem ishto Naomi, v'shnei banav, the names v'shem shnei banav. Bamidbar speaks about names, the names of Jews, and in Megillat Ruth, it keeps repeating the name, the name, and the name. What's the connection, says the Ramban, that a person's tafkid in life is contained in his name. So as the Jews walked by Moses and Aaron to be counted, they stated their name over and over again, Parshas Bamidbar. They stated their name, and the Ramban says, in their name, Moshe and Aaron defined their tafkid. Every person's tafkid in life is contained, Rabbi Yaakov Goldman, in his name. Therefore, it's very important to go by your Hebrew name. Very important to go by your Hebrew name. There's an amazing custom we have, Yehuda. At the end of Shmon Esrei, we say a pasuk in Tanakh that has the letters of what? Of our name. Why do we do that? Right? So my name is Ephraim, Aleph Mem. I have a pasuk in Nehemiah 9. Atu Hashem Elokim Hashem B'charta B'Avram. Ata, Aleph, Avram, Mem, Aleph Mem. Each of us, at the end of Shmon Esrei, there's a Kabbalistic minhag, right, Nechama, to state that pasuk that contains the letters of your name. And the shlos, what? Oh, I'm going to get to that.
Beginning and end.
Right. The Aleph, mine is Aleph Mem, Ephraim. Right? In the back of the Art Scroll Siddur, I think it's page 6 something.
970.
What?
970.
970, there's a list of all of the Hebrew names and the psukim in Tanakh. So the Shloah HaKodesh says, Al Pi Kabbalah, on the person on the day of his death when he's judged, this is a segula not to forget your name. Person when he dies, he's disoriented, he's afraid. So the first question the judge asks you is what? State your name. State your name. So if you say this pasuk in Tanakh that has your initials, you won't forget your name on the day of judgment.
Avraham is Aleph Mem.
That's right. My name is Ephraim Avam. Aleph Mem. Nehemiah Perik Tes. Or Atu Hashem Elokim Asher Becharta Ba'Avram. Samta Shmai Avraham. Aleph Mem. So somehow, if you say that pasuk, Yehuda, it's according to Kabbalah, it's a segula. You won't forget your name on the day of death. The first question the judge asks you in the human court is certainly true in the heavenly court. State your name. So somehow, by saying that pasuk, it's a segula you won't forget. What is it? Hocus pocus. What is it?
You're giving him something else's name.
You have to say that it's Aleph and Mem. You got to fry him Abraham. How do you know which is which?
Both is my. So that's the point. By saying that pasuk, what is it all about, Nechama? So remember, the Ramban told us that a person's tafkid in life is contained in his Hebrew name. So the first question God asks us on the day of death is, state your name. What is God really asking? Did you live up to your tafkid, which is contained what? In your name. That's what He's really asking you. Who can say yes? But, Rabbi Aaron, God is asking, state your name. What's He asking? What is your identity? Are you a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, a brain surgeon, a shoemaker? What are you? So you know what you tell God? I'm a pasuk in your Torah. If you want to know who I am, Atu Hashem Elokim Asher Becharta Ba'Avram V'Samta Shemai Avraham. God is going to ask you, what is my name? What's He really asking me? Did you fulfill your tafkid, which is contained what? So I'll say, I don't know. But you want to know who I am? I am a verse in your Torah, God. That's who I am. Now, if God hears that, Maddie, He has to go easy on me. If you want to know my identity, I'm not a brain surgeon, a garbage collector. I am a verse in your Torah. That's who I am. Well, God hears that. What can He say? Next.
How could God not know?
Does it?
What did God ask Adam? Ayeka. Who are you? It's a rhetorical question, Maddie. He said, we have to, who are you? Did you live up to your name, Adam? Are you a mensch? So we say a pasuk in Tanakh with my name, my identity, God. I'm a verse in your Torah. So we have names in my midbar, and over again in the book of Ruth, the name of Elimelech, the name of Naomi, the name of her sons, Machlon and Chilion. Who is Ruth? The name of Ruth. Again, V'Shem Hashenit Ruth. Again, the name. Who is Ruth? Is she a go-go dancer in Moab? Or is she the grandmother of the Messiah? Connie, who is she? You make the call. Ruth. Her name was Ruth. Where does she belong? Does she belong in the field of Las Vegas? Or does she belong in the field of what? Of Boaz. Ruth's field of dreams. Where does she belong? That's what. Every one of us is Ruth. Where do we belong? Do we belong in Moab, Chas v'Shalom, or do we belong where in Pisgat Zev? We have to choose. We have to choose. So, Let's analyze the book of Ruth and see why it's read when Dafke when on Shavuot. Well, the simple reason is that Shavuot is the yortzeit of King David. King David was born and died on Shavuot Shavuos. Who's King David's grandma and grandpa? So you read Ruth on the day that King David was born and died, that's his roots. Get it? Roots? Oh, roots. Roots. King David's roots are root. Right? That's his day he was born and when he died on Shavuos. So therefore, read the book where his roots are. The message of the book of Ruth is to be a Ruth person and not a ruthless person. Ooh. Be a Ruth person, a Chesed person, not a ruthless person. Oh. Now, who wrote the book of Ruth? Samuel. The Gemara Bava Basra, page 15, says, Yehuda, that Shmuel HaNavi wrote his book, and he also wrote the book of love, no, the book of Ruth, which is the book of love. Ruth comes from the word Reyut. What does Reyut mean? Love and friendship. The book of Ruth means love and friendship. Ooh. And there's another tie-in to what? We said that Parshas Bamidbar is always read the week of what? Of Shavuos. So Ruth means Reyut, loving friendship. Who was she a friend to? Naomi and to God, right? And Parshas Bamidbar, there's something incredible. The Torah lists the names of the princes of Israel. In Parshas Bamidbar, it lists the names of the princes of Israel. And it says that the name of the prince of God, Eliasaph ben Deuel. Why should I care? Torah is not a history book. The prince of Shevet Gad, the chief rabbi, was Eliasaph ben Deuel. Ben Deuel, not Ben Cartwright, Ben Deuel. But later on, what's he called? He's called Eliasaph ben Reuel. Is that a typo? God forbid. In the beginning of the parsha, the prince of Shevet Gad is called Ben Deuel. And later on, the prince of God is called Ben Reuel. Is it a typo? Chas v'sholom? No. What does Deuel mean? To know God. What does Reuel mean? What? Reuel, to be God's lover. Reuel, with an ayin. To know him is to love him. Where do you think that song comes from? Parshas Bamidbar. Eliasaph was Ben Deuel, the son of he knows God. Once you know God, Lillian, he was called Ben Reuel. To know God is to love God. Isn't that incredible? What's in a name? This is left. What's in a name? Deuel, know God. To know God is Reuel, is to love God. So Parshas Bamidbar, Reuel, Reyut, Ruth, she was God's lover. Wow, she was God's lover. Now Naomi, what does Naomi mean? Sweet and pleasant. Naim, Yom Naim. So she comes back. So she went to Moab. She lost her husband and her children, and she was poverty struck. She lost, stricken. She comes back. She comes back to Eretz Yisrael, and people say, "Is this Naomi, this wealthy woman?" Now she's oiskemitchit. How do you say? Haggard and worn out. And she says, "Al tikrena Naomi. Don't call me Naomi. Krena li Mara. I'm no longer sweet. I am never Mara. Ki heimar shadai li ma'od. God has done very bitterly acted with her. She left full with children, a family, wealth, and fame, and she comes back bereft. What's the word?
Yes.
No husband, no children, poverty-stricken.
Wasn't her decision.
Okay, but God punished her for leaving Eretz Yisrael, abandoning the poor. Okay, she should have divorced him. The Mishnah Ksuba says if your husband wants to take you out of Eretz Yisrael,
Divorce him.
you have to divorce, and he has to pay the full Ksuba.
Your wife doesn't want to come.
Right, your wife doesn't want to come to leave Borough Park, you can divorce her, and she forfeits a Ksuba. Right? Now that's pretty amazing. So Naomi and Ruth are full of tsar and mara. Let's do some biblical analysis. Eov was also full of tsar and bitterness. Eov complains, why is this happening to me? Ruth was also full of tsar and bitterness. Did she complain?
No.
What was Ruth's reaction to her matzav? Do chesed. Instead of Job, who complains, right, and God doesn't give him an answer, Ruth's answer to suffering is what? Do chesed. So the book of Ruth is read when? On Matan Torah, because the Torah is all about what? Chesed. The Torah begins with chesed, ends with chesed, right? It says God made coats of leather jackets for what? For Adam and Chava. Remember the fans, leather jackets? The Torah begins with chesed, it ends with chesed. The Torah, God clothed the naked. Who was naked? Adam and Chava. And the Torah ends with chesed. Chesed shel emet. Who buries Moses? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Torah is all about chesed. So the book of Ruth is all about what? So it's very matim, Yehuda, to read the book of Ruth on Matan Torah, because the Torah is all about what? Chesed. The Mishnah says, Hafoch ba, v'afoch ba, the kula ba. Hafoch ba, the kula ba. The Torah is all about ba, turned over. Hafoch ba, turn over ba. You turn over ba, what do you get? Have. The root of love is have. The Torah is all about giving. Giving to the zulat, giving to the other. Who personifies that? Ruth. Ruth personifies that. Hafoch ba, the Torah is all about turn over the ba. Turn over the ba, you get have. That's the root of a hava, to give to the other. That's what Judaism is all about. That's what Matan Torah is all about. And Ruth is the giving person. She doesn't complain. Why is this happening to me? What's her reaction? Do chesed. Do chesed. Wow. So, she leaves the field of, I have over again, she leaves the field of Moab, and she comes into the field of what? Boaz. She could have remained in Las Vegas, but she chose to leave Las Vegas and come. Her field of dreams is going to be not in Las Vegas, but where? In Eretz Yisrael. That's pretty amazing, right? Now, her husband's name was Machlon. What does Machlon mean? Machala. Machala means he was spiritually sick. He left Eretz Yisrael and he married a non-Jew. But the word Machalon is also Mechila, Mochel. You have to be spiritually sick. Does a person live up to his name? He has free will. Machlon can mean either machla. What does machla mean? Spiritually sick, or it can mean mochel. It can mean what? Forgiveness. We have free will to live up to our name or not to live up to our name. It's up to us. It's up to us. That's what the book of Ruth is. Every one of us has to choose where we're going to fulfill, Elisheva, my field of dreams.
How about Orpah? She chose.
What? Orpah chose to go back. Go back to Moab, right? What happened to her? She became the grandmother of Goliath. The Medrash says, the showdown at the OK Corral, David HaMelech was a grandson of whom? Goliath was a grandson of whom? Orpah, the one that turned back. Orpah, Oref, she gave her neck, her back, she turned back. So they had the showdown. the grandson of Ruth versus the grandson of Orpah, Goliath. Okay. Now, why did Boaz merit to be the grandpa of Mashiach? There were other great people. Why Dafke Boaz? So we spoke about Ruth. Ruth was the chesed person. The chesed person was Ruth. Instead of belly aching about her matzav like Job, what was her reaction? To chesed. And the Torah is all about chesed. So because of her great chesed to her mother-in-law, usually mother-in-law and daughter-in-laws usually don't get along, right? Normally, right? What's the difference between mother-in-laws? What's the difference between in-laws and outlaws? At least outlaws are wanted. Ooh, at least outlaws are, get it? Outlaws are wanted, right? Get it? But no. Ruth, she was a princess in Moab. And she'd rather be a beggar woman in Pisgat Zev than to be a princess in Moab. You make the call. I live Pisgat Zev, okay? I mean Eretz Yisrael. We have to choose in life now. So therefore, she was the grandma of Mashiach. What about him? Why was he the grandpa of Mashiach? I'll tell you why.
He was also a Hesed man also.
Yes, we'll see why. Boaz was a very rich man. He had many workers. He says, Hine Boaz bo me Bethlehem, vayomer lakotzrim, Hashem imachem. How did he greet his factory workers? Hashem imachem, he greeted them. Not you bimbos, get back to work. Hashem imachem. The Gemara Bracha says that he instituted to mention God's name in a... Why do we say Shalom Aleichem? Who's Shalom? Hashem. Boaz instituted to greet the fellow Jew with what? With the Shem Hashem. He said, Hashem imachem. Did Boaz see his sweaty workers as lowlifes? Just hired help? You bimbos, get back to work. He said, Hashem imachem. He saw a sweaty, dirty worker. And you know what he said? You're an image of God. Despite your sweat and grime, you have a tzelem Elohim inside of you. If you can talk to your worker like that, you deserve to be the grandpa of the Messiah. Hashem imachem. Where does the English word goodbye come from? The English word goodbye. God be with you. But that's not what Boaz said. He said, Hashem imachem. God is with you. Not God be with you. Goodbye. Hashem imachem. God is in you. Despite your grime and your filth and your bimmy work, you are a tzelem Elohim. Well, if you can talk to your worker like that, you deserve to be the grandpa of the Messiah. Boaz, he's the one that was mitzakein to greet a fellow Jew with God's name. Because every Jew, every human being has a godly image inside of him. No matter what you do for a living. No matter what you look like. Hashem imachem. For that he was worthy to be the grandpa of what? Of the Mashiach. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Right? Now, she went out to glean in the field. How many fields were there in ancient Israel? Hundreds, right? Hundreds and hundreds. The Pasuk says, Mikre, she went to whose field? Boaz. What does Mikre mean?
By accident.
Coinky dinky. But Mem Kuf Rei Shei, rearranged Mikre, what do you get?
Hashem.
Rak me Hashem. It looked like it was a mikra. She just happened to go into Boaz's field. But we know there are no mikra. That's only an illusion. It's rak by Hashem. Of all the hundreds of fields she could have gone to, she went to the field of Boaz, who happened to be a relative of what? Of Naomi. Look how God works what? In mysterious ways. So he says to her, He sees how modest she is. All the other women, they just grab, and she takes only 2 stalks, not 3, shouldn't be stealing. And the other women, they don't care, they bend down, the skirt is exposed. She bends down very modestly. So he says to her, Yishalem Hashem pa'olech. May God pay you back. Hi maskurtech shleima. May your reward be shleima. May your reward for being so kind to your mother-in-law, may it be shleima. So the Talmud says, Atikra shleima elo shlomo. May your reward be shlomo. He gave her bracha that she should live to see Shlomo HaMelech on the throne. You hear it? You look in the Navi, she was 140 years old. And Shlomo HaMelech had a special kisei for his Sapta Rabba. Because Boaz said, may your reward be Shleima. Al tikra Shleima Eloat Shlomo. She was 140 years old because her husband, her future husband, gave her a bracha that she should live to see Shlomo HaMelech what? On the throne, right? Yeah. Right? We're going, yeah. Now, what's a mitzvah worth to you, Elisheva? Can we put a value on a mitzvah? What's a mitzvah worth? To Esav, the Bechorah was worth what? A bowl of beans. Who decides the value of mitzvah, Shron? Who? No. You create your own reality, Rabbi Aaron. Who decides the worth of a mitzvah? Well, Esav decided that the Bechorah is worth what? A bowl of beans. That's all it's worth. We decide what a mitzvah is worth. The value of a mitzvah. How do we decide? What you're willing to sacrifice for it and give up. Ruth gave up Malchus. She was the princess of Las Vegas. She gave up being a princess to become a beggar woman in Eretz Yisrael. So we put the value on a mitzvah. What's important in life? What's important in life? Gashmiyut or Ruchnius? We decide. Ruth decided. She gave up Malchut, royalty, to become a beggar woman in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore she was worthy to be what? The grandma of the Melech HaMashiach. That's pretty interesting, right? So Ruth and Boaz. That's pretty interesting. Ruth and Boaz. Now, Tanakh is not a history book, Elisheva. Why does the Tanakh tell us that Boaz went out to winnow in his goren? The word granary in English comes from the Hebrew goren. The Navi says Boaz is winnowing his grain tonight. I need to know that. 3,000 years ago, Boaz was winnowing his grain. Who cares? The Tanakh is not a history book. Who was Boaz? The chief rabbi of Israel. In those days he only had one, not two. Boaz was the chief rabbi of Israel, the shofet, a very wealthy man, like Ben Cartwright, Ponderosa, many workers. The Navi has to say he went himself to winnow the grain, said some Sprecher to teach, buddy, that working the land of Israel is a mitzvah. So the chief rabbi closed his office in Heichel Shlomo, and he went to winnow the grain personally to teach, says the Chassam Sofer, Haredi rabbi, that working the land of Israel is what? It's a mitzvah. I'm not going to give it to my Hasidim, my workers. I'm going to do it myself.
How can working be a mitzvah?
Well, working the land of Israel is a mitzvah. Otherwise, the Navi wouldn't have to tell me that the chief rabbi of Boaz went himself to winnow the grain.
How come working the land is a mitzvah and others hold that living in the land is not a mitzvah?
Well, I don't know. Don't confuse me with the facts. Right? Don't confuse me with the facts. And therefore, the Navi says that what? That he went himself to winnow the grain, that working the land of Israel is a mitzvah. Wow. Now, so Boaz says to her, Eshes Chayil At. Boaz, Rabbi Yaakov Goldman, says to his future wife, they're not dating yet. He says, Eshes Chayil At. King Solomon in Mishlei 31 wrote, Eishes Chayil Miyimtza, la 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 la. Who did he sing it to? His grandmother. Boaz calls Ruth Eishes Chayil At. So 100 years later, approximately, because Ruth was 40 now. She lived to be 140. About 100 years later, when King Solomon wrote Mishlei 31, Eishes Chayil, who did he write it to? His Sapta Rabbah, who was sitting next to him. What? It's a good thing you came today. Eishes Chayil, he wrote it to his, look in the Ruth, look in Megillat Ruth, chapter 3, Pasuk 11. He calls his future wife Eishes Chayil. And she's the great-grandmother of whom? Of Shlomo. Of King David and Shlomo. So when Shlomo wrote Mishlei 31, Eishes Chayil, he dedicated it to what? His great-grandmother Ruth, that his great-grandpa had already called her what? Eishes Chayil. Eishes Chayil, right? Now, we make choices in life. There was a closer relative than Boaz who could have married Ruth and redeemed the field. But he says, no, I'm afraid that she is not a real convert because Moabites can't convert to the Jewish people, right? He's called Ploni Almoni. What does Ploni Almoni mean? John Doe. First he was called Tov. What's in a name? What does Tov mean? Good.
Can't get better than that.
He could have been the grandpa of the Mashiach because he was a closer relative than what? Than Boaz. But he said, no, I don't want it. So from being Tov, he became Ploni Almoni. John Doe. Joe Blow. He could have been the Sab of the Mashiach. He became anonymous. What's the value of a mitzvah? What you're willing to pay for it. What's the value of a mitzvah? He didn't want the mitzvah to marry Ruth, to do a chesed. He didn't want it. So from being Tov, he became Joe Blow. Ploni Almoni. What's the value of a mitzvah? The Gemara in Shabbos says, on Shavuos, the great Rav Yosef made a super feast for all of the rabbis. Not on Pesach, not on Sukkot, but on Shavuos he made a super party for the rabbis. The great Rav Yosef. You know why? He said, Kama Yosef yesh b'shuk. There are many Joe Blows in the market. What makes me special? Why am I Rav Yosef? Because I have the Torah. Otherwise I'd be just plain Joe. Many Joes are in the shuk. Why am I the great Rav Yosef? Because I have Torah. So Kabbalah Satorah. Believe Torah, I'm a plain Joe. With the Torah, I'm somebody special. I'm somebody special. Now, whose Torah is it? Yehuda. Whose Torah is it? God's Torah or our Torah? If you look at the end of the Haftorah that we read, the Haftorah that we read on Shabbos HaGadol, the prophet says, remember the Torah's Moshe Avdi. Is it Moshe's Torah? It's God's Torah. So the Talmud says it's God's Torah. Once you study Torah, it becomes yours. It was God's Torah, but now, Avram, who's it belong to? Me and you and me. It becomes my Torah. I become a piece of the rock, the piece of eternity. So therefore, Shavuos is an extra. The Ariya Kodesh says of all three Chagim, Sharona, which is the most holiest? Shavuos. Shavuos is the most holiest of all three Chagim. So if that's the case, how come it's only one day? What am I, chopped liver? The other Chagim are 7 days. Shavuos is the holiest Chag, and yet it's only one day. Isn't that bizarre? If it's the holiest Chag, it should be 14 days. Right? Man ishtana Shavuot, it's only one day, and the other Chagim are what, Nechama?
What's the source?
7 what?
What's the source of Shavuos being the holiest day?
The Ariya Kodesh says so. I'll take it to the bank. The Holy Ariya Kodesh says that of the three Chagim, Shavuos is the holiest. So says the Ari. So if that's the case, Sharona, that just begs the question, why is it what? One day.
Plus there's no mitzvah.
Oh, Shtei Alechem. Shtei Alechem. In the temple, this stuff, right? Shavuos is called Chag HaKatzir. The holiday is cut short. Chag HaKatzir, the holiday intergeschnitten. How do you say that in Yiddish? Chag HaKatzir. Why? Says the Chassam Sofer something amazing. The book of Ruth is read on Shavuos because the book of Ruth discusses Leket Shikhampeya, the gifts that you have to give to the poor people. If you look in Pasha's Emor, last week, Nechama, Leket Shikhampeya is written next to which Chag? Chag Shavuot. What's the connection? Why in Pasha's Emor does the Torah put Leket Shikhampeya, the laws of giving gifts to the poor, right next to Shavuos? Why? Because Shavuos is the harvest season. When does Leket Shikhampeya kick in? The harvest season. So since Shavuos is the harvest season, that's when Farmer Schwartz has to give what? Is Leket Shikhampeya, the English word collect. Leket, collecting gleanings, don't pick it up, leave it for poor people like Ruth. So that's why you read the book of Ruth on Shavuos, that's the harvest season, when Ruth and all the other poor people had a right to what? Collect. Leket. So some Sefer, that's why Shavuos is cut short. Listen to this. Shavuos should have been 7 days. It's one of the big three. But Shavuos is the harvest season. The poor people eagerly await this season. You're going to keep Yontif for 7 days, like Pesach. The poor people will be disappointed. Anticipation is making me wait. They wait all year for this season, Lillian. You're going to keep 7 days Yontif, you lock up your field, you go to a hotel. The poor people will be disappointed. God says, Moichel Toivis. Cut Chag HaKatzir. Cut the Yontif down to 1 day, not to disappoint poor people. Torah is all about what? Sensitivity to the Zulat. You can't keep the poor people waiting a whole week. You're going to break their little hearts. More important to give your gleanings on time, which is due the harvest season, that's more important than keeping a Chag 7 days. And all the Karbanot you would have brought. So you see, the Torah experience, Elisheva, is all about caring and reaching out to the less fortunate. Who personifies that? Ruth. So it's very matim to read her book when? On Chag Matan Torah. Very matim.
3 days of what's Lord this year.
You know what's going on here? What does Ruth teach? Every person is writing their book. A Ruth. Can you imagine a go-go dancer in Moab? And she has a Tanakh written, a chapter in Tanakh.
People don't know what go-go dancer is.
No, I'm dating myself. Moab was a symbol of immorality. Moab made Las Vegas look like a kindergarten. And that's where she came from. And she could have stayed there. But she chose, her field of dreams was Eretz Yisrael. Look what a person can make of himself. He can pull himself up by his own bootstraps. I don't care where you were, where you were born. God, it doesn't matter to me. It's what you make of yourself. That's what the Torah teaches. People cop out, no yichus, born to wrong parents. Who could cop out more than Ruth? That didn't stop her. So it shouldn't stop us either. Yes?
How do we understand that she came by this, that she had this in her? Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Everyone has free will. She could have chosen, like Orpah could have been like her sister-in-law, right? Everyone can choose. Everyone has intelligence. They have to choose, right? She could have chose the other way. But this is the lesson of all of us, no matter how low we are, we can write a chapter in Tanakh. All of us are writing a chapter in Tanakh, whether we know it or not. And after 120, God will read it back to us. What will it say? What will it say? You make the call. Will it say what Orpah did? Go back to the discotheque in Las Vegas? Or will it say what Ruth wrote? Oh, you write the book of love. The Torah is the book of love. Torah begins with chesed, ends with chesed. It's all about doing chesed. And Ruth personifies that chesed person. The little book, it's a simple book, right? But it's far from being simple at all. Far. Al pi Kabbalah, the Ramban Rabbeinu Bechai tell us that this book, which looks simple, contains the secret of Gilgal, the Shamot, of transmigration of the soul. If you look at the book carefully, we see something amazing. It says Naomi and Ruth returned from the fields of Moab to come back to Bethlehem. Was Ruth ever in Bethlehem? It says, Vatoshav Naomi v'Ruth misdei Moab le Bethlehem. Naomi came back because she left Bethlehem. But Ruth never set eyes on Bethlehem. Why did the Navi say that Ruth also returned from the fields of Moab to Bethlehem? She was born in Moab. This is the first time in Eretz Yisrael. What do you mean she returned to Israel? Was it her first time? Or was it? She was never in Eretz Yisrael. But she was. Little we know it. If you look in chapter 3, Pasuk 7, get home, you look it up. Megillat Ruth, chapter 3, Pasuk 7. It says, Vatovoi Balat. She snuck up on Boaz in the field there. Vatovoi Balat. She came with the secret. Now the word Balat in Hebrew, Lat means secret. But the word Lot means Lot. Lot. Vatovoi Balat, says the Ramban, she came with the secret. What secret? That she was a Gilgal of Lot. How was Moab born? Lot had relations with his daughter. Who was born? Moab. What does Moab mean? From father. Ruth was a grandchild of Moab. That means Ruth comes from whom? Lot and his own daughter. So the Navi says, Vatovoi Balat. She came with the secret. The word Lot in Hebrew means secret, but the word Lot in Hebrew is also the name of what? Of Abraham's nephew. So she came back, because Lot did live in Israel. She came back with the secret that she's going to be metakein, the sin of Lot. It ain't over till it's over. Abraham tells Lot, Hiporet nomi alai, separate from me. He said, get lost. What should Lot have said? Never, uncle, I can't leave you. Abraham was testing Lot. You think it didn't break his heart? But he said, okay, goodbye. What should he have said? I can't leave you, Uncle Abraham. Abraham said, Hiporet nomi, separate. He failed, he left. Centuries later, he comes back as Ruth, and Naomi says the same words to her. Get lost. And what does she say? Ki amoves yafrid beini. But now I'm not going to make that same mistake again. Only death will separate me from you. The same words that Abraham said to Lot, separate, is the same words that Naomi said to whom? And this time she said, I'm not making that mistake. Now only death will separate me from you. So the message of this simple book, says the Ramban Rabbeinu Bechai, teaches the secret of reincarnation. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later. Wow. Lot failed. He had to come back as Ruth. So we see that the Shamas, Yehuda, we see that souls are AC/DC or bisexual. Not bisexual, excuse me. Asex. Because Lot became what? Became I'm trapped in a woman's body. What? Lot became Ruth. And the Ramban says, therefore, there's a custom to name children after dead grandparents. Because neshamas travel in families. Chances are that that child is what? The reincarnated soul of that dead grandparent. So therefore, there's a custom to name children after deceased grandparents, because chances are that that kid, Elisheva, is what? That deceased grandparent come back. Neshamas travel in families to do their tikkunim. And we see this, says the Ramban, from Lot, who was the great-grandfather of Ruth, coming back as his granddaughter. And the Navi says in chapter 3, Pasuk 6, Vatovai Balat. Lat means secret. What's the secret? Gilgal Neshamot.
Why did he deserve to have Ruth the tikkun?
Why did he deserve to have? Because Lot was no slouch. He was Abraham's nephew. He made a couple of mistakes.
He said, I don't want you.
Okay, that's what he said. So he made a boo-boo. So God gave him a second chance to come back to be metakein the chet. And this time, he was tested. The same words that Abraham said to Lot, Elisheva, is Naomi said to her. And this time she said what? No. Only death will separate me. I'm not going to make that mistake, what? Again. Now, if you look at the end of the book, so Ruth marries Boaz. The Talmud says he was 80 and she was 40. Ruth marries Boaz, and he died on the honeymoon night. Can you imagine the headlines in the Jewish press? Chief Rabbi of Israel marries former go-go dancer of Moab, found dead on honeymoon night. Can you imagine the headlines in the Jewish press? Huh? Can you imagine what the wagging tails were saying? Deserves him right. The chief rabbi marries a former go-go dancer, half his life, half his age. What a way to go.
Nothing will ever come out of it.
So God tells the prophet Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts. It looked like it was an Onish. 80-year-old chief rabbi marries Ruth from Las Vegas, found dead on honeymoon night. So the Talmud says no. Boaz's time was up the night before. He lived a full life. He was 80 years old. He was supposed to die the night before. God kept him alive one extra night to plant the seed of the Mashiach in the womb of what? Ruth. And then, beam me up, Scotty. But we don't see it that way. God looks at it differently. He was supposed to die the night before. So God kept him around an extra night to plant the seed of the Mashiach in the womb of Ruth, and then he went, what? Bye-bye. Now, the Navi says that Ruth gave birth to a son. The Navi says the next morning he was dead, but he planted the seed. 9 months later, she gave birth to a son. Ruth did. And then the Navi says something very strange. Yulat ben Lenomi. Is that a typo? It should have said Yulat ben Lerut. Well, she's a surrogate mother. A son was born to Naomi. But that's not so. A son was born to whom? Ruth. So how come the Navi says Yulat at the end of the chapter? The pasuk by the chapter, at the end of the last chapter, that's chapter 4, pasuk 17, it says Yulat ben Lenomi. A son was born to Naomi. But that wasn't so. A son was born to Ruth. Says the Ramban, what do you see from here? That even though the biological mother was what? Ruth. But this son of Ruth was really Naomi's dead son. Yulat ben Lenomi.
Which one?
Machlon. Machlon. Ramban said it was Machlon. Machlon means he was spiritually sick. He left Israel, he married a non-Jewish woman. Ruth wasn't Jewish then. He came back, and now he became Oved. What does Oved mean? Evet Hashem. Avi Yishai, Avi David. He became the servant of what? Of God. the father of Yishai, the grandfather of what? Of King David. So Yulat ben Lenomi, even though biologically he was the son of Ruth, but spiritually he was the son of Naomi. He was Naomi's dead son. What business is God in, Yehuda? The recycling business. Soul repair business. I'm a soul man. God's in the soul repair business. So he recycles these souls. God doesn't give up on any soul. He can't afford to. Can a father give up on a child? So God brings back recycling until you get it right. So Yulat ben Lenomi, that this was Naomi's dead son, recycled, and now he became the son of what? Of Ruth. And instead of being machlon, spiritually sick, he became Oved, the Evet Hashem. Wow. We all get a second and a third chance, right? But you can pay me now or you can pay me later, right? It's very painful for the soul to come back. Soul doesn't want to come back. So God says, look, you can do it now, you can do it later. There's a verse in Isaiah chapter 60, Reb Meir. Va'amech kulam tzadikim. What's God's John Hancock? Emet. The Talmud says God's signature is Emet. So how could he tell Isaiah in chapter 60, Va'amech kulam tzadikim? Isaiah bad-mouthed the Eden, they're no good, right? So the Malach burned his lips. Isaiah, the prophet, the Yidden are no good, they're no good, Meretz no good. So Malach came and burned his lips. God said, what are you speaking bad against my kinderlich for? Va'amech kulam tzadikim. Yeshayahu 60. God says, your people that you're bad-mouthing, all of them are what? Rabbi Yaakov, I don't know about you, but I'm no tzaddik. You are, I'm not me. So what is, so Rabbeinu Bechai says, Va'amech kulam tzadikim. After all the Gilgulim, Va'amech kulam tzadikim, buddy. After all the recycling jobs, all of us will be tzaddikim. That's what God meant in Isaiah chapter 60, because God's word is truth. If we're not a tzaddik now, Yehuda, then after the Gilgulim and Tikkunim, Va'amech kulam tzaddikim. And what proves that? The little book of Ruth contains the secret of Gilgul Neshamos. Who's good in Gematria here? I wish Reuben was here. Gimel Lamed, Gimel Vav Lamed. Gimel Lamed, Gimel Vav Lamed is Gematria Chesed. You check me out? Gimel Lamed, Gimel Vav Lamed is 72. Yes? Chesed. Chesed? 60. Samach is 60. Coinky Dinky, Gilgul's Gematria Chesed. Says the Ari HaKadosh, the greatest chesed God can do for a sinful soul is what? Chesed has no yud. Gilgul has no yud. Gimel Lamed, Gimel Vav Lamed. There's no yud in Gilgul. Gimel Lamed, Gimel Vav Lamed. That's 72, yes? Last time I checked. And chesed is also what? Coinky Dinky? Says the Ari, the greatest chesed God can do for a sinful soul is what?
Second chance.
Recycle him. That's a chesed haboreh, that God's in the soul repair business. Get it? Soul repair business. What? Another chance, until va'amech kulam tzadikim. So this simple book is not so simple. Says the Ramban, so why of all the books in Tanakh, there are how many? 24. Why does the Torah, God wish to teach the principle of Gilgul in a book of Ruth? Fasten your seatbelts. Because the Zohar HaKodesh says, Ruth is a convert, right? The Zohar HaKodesh says that any convert is really a fablunget neshama. How do you say fablunget? He was really a Jewish soul, but he needed a tikkun to be born non-Jewish. And once the tikkun is made, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Says the Ramban, based on the Zohar. The Ramban didn't know about the Zohar, but they all from the same source. The Zohar was revealed after Ramban died, but the Zohar didn't make up nothing rule. It's from Shimon Bar Yochai. It was only revealed in 1240. Ramban died 1267. But anyway, it's the same idea. Api Kabbalah, the Zohar says that every ger is really what? A Jewish soul that got verblunget. And once the tikkun is made, it comes back. So therefore, the principle of Gilgal is in the book of Ruth, which is the classic ger, that every convert to Yahadut is really a Jewish soul that took a detour for some reason for a tikkun, and once the tikkun is made, Rabbi Yaakov, what? Welcome back. So therefore, of all the books in Tanakh, this little book teaches the principle of what? Of Gilgal Neshamot. And therefore the Navi says in chapter 1 in Megillat Ruth that Ruth returned to Israel. What do you mean she returned to Israel? She never was in Israel. Lillian. Chapter 1, Pasuk 22, it says Naomi and Ruth returned to Israel. Naomi returned to Israel, but Ruth was never in Israel. Not as Ruth she wasn't, but as Lot she was. You just got to read the text, no Bible codes. Yes, buddy.
Way before Hashem planned Boaz and Ruth to get together,
Right? Was it a blind date?
when Ruth and Naomi returned to Beersheba, they were met by
To Bethlehem.
they were met by the whole town. What were they doing? It was
Boaz buried his wife that day. Look, Koinky Dinky. What buddies are Koinky Dinky? The whole town came out. Why did they come out? Because that day that Ruth and Naomi happened to return to Israel, that day Boaz's wife had to die. Because if Boaz's wife wouldn't have died, he wouldn't have had a date with Ruth. Look how God works in mysterious ways. The day that Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem was the same day that Boaz what? Buried his wife. Why did God do that? To make way for what? A blind date. So Boaz had to marry Ruth. Wow. Isn't that incredible? Even though he was twice her age. God tells Isaiah, my ways are not your ways. Not my way, the highway. My ways are not your ways. Don't even try to figure me out, says God. You'll never know. Yes? You had a question? No? Any questions, comments? Next Sunday, we do have a shiur about the original D.C. Jerusalem is the original D.C. before Washington, but not down here. Oh, D.C., not David's capital. Oh, the original D.C. Next Sunday, not here, upstairs. We get kicked upstairs next week. Next Sunday, we're here, but not here, we're upstairs. The original D.C. Thank you very much.